This is our first sells video of the season, and that should tell you a lot. We are confident that these guys are going to be guys you should sell off your fantasy football team. And look, don't get upset. Don't get offended because these guys are on your team and they're sells. If you don't agree, then don't sell them. These are guys we are selling. We're telling you what we're doing. You are welcome to follow the advice or not. But we're going to start with George Pickens. And a lot of people are going to be mad about this one. George Pickens has a pretty cultish following. And with Pickens, the reality of it is, coming off a 33-point game against Green Bay was probably the best time to sell, to be honest with you. But 13 points on 4 targets today against the New York Jets. And obviously, look, Pickens had that big touchdown that pretty much salvaged his entire day. He had I think 9 points on that play. He obviously had sauce on him the whole day. It was a very tough matchup for him. They have Carolina next week. Realistically, maybe you wait a week to sell George Pickens. But here's what we're seeing with Pickens. CD's probably coming back next week. If CD's not back next week, he's back the week after that. And with Pickens, I do think there are a lot of people who are really, really buying into him being like a wide receiver 1 in fantasy football. Because coming into this week, he was the wide receiver 7 in fantasy football. He'll probably be a high-end wide receiver 2 after this week when the rankings all roll in. I don't think he's a high-end wide receiver 2 in fantasy football. I think he's a low-end wide receiver 2 in fantasy football. And that's a pretty big difference when you're talking about if you can sell a guy that is a low-end wide receiver 2 for high-end wide receiver 2 guys, actual high-end wide receiver 2 guys, or underrated wide receiver 1 guys. That's typically a pretty good move in fantasy football. And so with Pickens, it's not necessarily a performance thing. Pickens has been fine. The target volume has been great. It's the best QB situation of his career. The offense is a top 6 offense right now. It's more the fact that I think George Pickens' value right now is a little bit over where we should probably expect him to finish rest of season. I still think he's going to be fine rest of season, and if you value, the offense and you value the safety of George Pickens, then again, I think he may be a hold. But like here are guys realistically that I think you probably could get for George Pickens at this point if you really wanted to, and I would definitely take him over George Pickens. I don't know if people are still doing Chase after he had 30 points, but last week you probably could have gotten it done. Sutton is the obvious one. Sutton's the easy one. I would take Courtland Sutton over George Pickens every day of the week, twice on Sundays. Like not even relatively close. I would take Garrett Wilson over George Pickens at this point. Garrett Wilson, 19 points. Garrett Wilson's last 3 games, 24, 20, and 19. He had 9 points in week 2. Outside of that, 22, 24, 20, and 19. He's the wide receiver 5 in the season. He's continuing to produce with nobody at quarterback position there. So I would take Pickens over him. So if you can sell him I would take Wilson over him. So if you can sell him for Wilson, I would. Rashee Rice, again, we have one more week without Rashee Rice. I would do that. I'm on the edge. Like Ibuka, you can't get done anymore, I don't think. But if you could, that would be amazing. Devontae Adams, I'd probably lean Adams. I think Adams is the better wide receiver too, and they pass just as much there in LA. Ted McMillan, probably not at this point. But again, I think some of those guys are realistic. If you can pull it off, beautiful. But here's the thing about George Pickens. Don't sell him unless you can get one of these guys for him. It's not worth selling him low. He's still very valuable. And unless you get one of these prices for him, I don't think he's worth selling. But I do think you can try it, and I think you could potentially get it done.
So Sam Laporta had a great day against the Cincinnati Bugles of all teams. He had 20 points and had a touchdown. He was very efficient with his opportunity. But here's the thing. When you read between the lines with Sam Laporta and his production this week in week 5, his target volume didn't really go up from what you've been seeing. 4 targets in the first month of the season. He had 6 targets today. Nothing super sexy, nothing super crazy there where you're like, oh man, this volume goes up. Maybe he'll be able to maintain this even if it dips a little bit. Like, no. I really don't think so. This is the first week where he's had a touchdown. And honestly, this is just, in my opinion, this is like a better version of Mark Andrews, where he can salvage his days some weeks every once in a while where he'll get a good enough target volume without a touchdown that he can score in the double digits. But more often than not, when he doesn't have a touchdown, you've seen this historically with Sam Laporta dating back again to last season, where when he doesn't score a touchdown, he's in single digits every single week. The non-touchdown weeks last year for Sam Laporta, 8, 3, 5, 9, 3, 4, 4, 10, 18, and then 13. You tell me which ones are the outliers there. You tell me which ones are the outliers. So with Sam Laporta, again, in an offense that is so, we don't have to keep saying this. It's an overcrowded offense. Jahmyr Gibbs and Monty are consistently productive. They're the only consistently productive assets in that offense alongside Amon-Ra St. Brown, obviously. But between Sam Laporta and Jameson Williams, J-Mo has been in a rut for 3 straight weeks now. Again, bless the football gods. Didn't do anything this week against me. Had 2 points on 1 target and 1 reception today against Cincinnati. Like, he's had it pretty rough for 3 straight weeks. J-Mo's going to get his own. If history has shown us anything, J-Mo's going to have some really good weeks as well. Generally, when J-Mo has a good week, Sam Laporta does not, and vice versa. And sometimes they can both just have bad weeks. Rarely do they ever both have like very productive weeks at the same time. And oh, by the way, that has to be in addition to Amon-Ra, Monty, and Gibbs all producing at the same time. This is a crowded offense where, again, we're going to talk about another player that's on my team in the Flock League. Like, don't tell us we're not self-aware here. Don't get mad at us for ourselves. We're at least being self-aware. We're telling you to sell players that we currently own in the Flock League, the most followed fantasy football league in the world. We have these guys, and we're not just boosting them up our rankings like Corey and Danny. We actually are realistic here. So for Sam Laporta, I think Avery would totally agree here. 100%. Like this is a week where you see that touchdown come in against the Cincinnati Bugles of all teams, and you're like, yeah, probably not going to be counting on that every single week. It's not encouraging to see the volume literally stay the same for him, and he just happened to get one to the house.
All right, let's talk about Nathan's guy now. Talk about Marv.
You like how we traded it up there?
I do, and,
nice.
And I'm the one that gave you Laporta as a sell. Like, I mean,
yeah.
I just don't think I'll be able to sell him in the Flock League. Realistically,
I've had Marv. I've been wanting to sell Marv for a long time. So,
and you might be able to now after he's had 2 games of 18 and 13 his last 2 weeks. But you know, it's not been all bad for Marv. He was a low end wide receiver, a high end wide receiver 3 coming into today. He'll probably be a low end wide receiver 2 after today. But I just looking at Marv, I just don't trust. He's getting 5 targets a game. He's catching on average 4 of those. And, you know, in the weeks where he doesn't score a touchdown so far, this was his best. 13 points, didn't have a touchdown this week. The other 2 weeks, 4 and 7. Kyler was hobbled today. Look, they played the Titans. Okay. They're playing Green Bay in week 7. Indianapolis in week 6 is not a bad matchup. Dallas in week 9 is not good, but they have a bye in between there. And then Seattle, San Francisco. You got Tampa Bay later. You've got the Rams later. Look, the rest of the season's not great for Marv schedule-wise. And when I'm looking at some of the trades that have gone down for Marvin Harrison Jr. using the trade finder over on the site, these are real trades that happen in real fantasy football leagues. I saw Marvin Harrison Jr. move for Quinshon Judkins. I would take Judkins. That's not even close. Like, I wouldn't even think twice about taking Quinshon Judkins over Marvin Harrison Jr. This obviously isn't happening, but you saw a move go down for him straight up for Jamar Chase. And, you know, I think in most leagues that won't happen, but last week, I definitely think after last week with Jamar being at a low point, I think it was possible and somebody got it done. But realistically, there are some wide receivers in that range that have had bad games or on bye weeks or things like that you could potentially try to buy low on them. A.J. Brown is one of them. Somebody's, you know, swapped Marv for A.J. Brown straight up. I would take A.J. Brown the rest of the season, even though A.J. Brown looks really bad. Because realistically, you're probably buying low on A.J. Brown, if we have to be honest. And the last one that's interesting is Jalen Waddle. And when I finish my rest of season rankings this week, I'm going to have Waddle very close to Marv. And I think there's a pretty good case to be made to have Waddle over Marv. Because think about it. They're both on terrible offenses with incompetent coaching for the most part. But one of them is going to get 8 to 10 targets a game. The other one is going to get 5 targets a game. And the bottom line is I just trust Waddle more. I just trust the developed guy in Waddle who's going to have that receiving core pretty much to himself. He's fighting with Malik Washington and Darren Waller.
The Cardinals are objectively awful at adjusting in game when you're talking about their game plan. Outside of their scripted plays, which are really, really solid in the first quarter, when they're like, we're going to make Marv a focal point today. Yes, 5 targets in the first quarter. He looks so good. Nothing the rest of the game. 0. And it's not like he's not open. It's not like he just stopped being open after the first quarter. There is a systematic issue in Arizona when you're talking about the coaching staff and how they're actually adjusting in game week in and week out. There's a reason that they're blowing these games at the end of the day, and it's because of a multitude of issues. Honestly, it's ironic that it's been special teams for 3 straight weeks, but I mean, these guys, this offense, this coaching staff cannot get their best players implemented in the times that they need it most. And that's a significant issue when you're talking about fantasy production, because when you need it most and the team needs it most to win, why is it not going to Marvin? I mean, this is the same kind of conversation with McBride too.
I can tell you why.
Ceiling as well.
I can tell you why. Is because when you look at Marv's quality targets in some of these games, most of them are coming in the scripted plays. And once they get out of the script,
that's what I was just saying.
And they get in the improv. But I'm saying specifically the reason is
they cannot adjust.
The reason is because they're scripted, and when they get out of the scripted plays and Kyler starts improvising, he's not looking for Marv.
Yep.
And so that's an issue, and it's a Kyler issue. And a Kyler issue is not changing. And a coaching issue is not changing.
No.
I just don't trust Marv rest of the season. If you do, go for it. But I think you could sell him and still get a decent amount for him.
Yeah, so David Montgomery coming off of another solid game against Cincy. He had 18 points. And it's kind of been up and down for Monty, honestly. He's had a couple single-digit games against Green Bay and Cleveland this week. Those are tougher run defenses. But when you look ahead, they got KC and Tampa Bay in week 6 and 7. The really, really big days that you had from Monty were against Baltimore and Cincinnati. I don't think it's coincidence that those 2 big days came against 2 of the worst defenses in the NFL, where you saw the Lions really establish the lead pretty quickly in those games, or really control over like the game flow there. And I want to show you this the offensive snap share for Jahmyr Gibbs versus Monty in this game. Gibbs actually played 71% of Detroit's offensive snaps. This game over like the first 7 drives, which were really the bulk of like when those drives mattered and they were trying to establish their lead and stretch it out. Then you got later in the game, and then they just turned to Monty for the rest of the time. And they're like, okay, Monty, it's time to just run the clock out, right? And you saw this against Baltimore as well, where they got that multi-touchdown lead over Baltimore, and they were like, okay, Monty, here we go. We're just going to run it. We're going to go low-risk plays, and he was able to break them off for touchdowns. Opportunity really is key for David Montgomery, and when it's not like at a really, really high clip, then you're going to have a lower floor for him. So 29 points against Baltimore with a decent amount of touches, 18 touches against Cincinnati on the ground, 19 total. I don't think you're going to see almost 20 touches against Kansas City and Tampa Bay respectively, when they're probably going to be going punch for punch to the end of the game in both of those matchups. Those are 2 high-scoring offenses that they're going up against. These are going to be very, very hopefully entertaining matchups, and that doesn't necessarily bode well for the let's slow the game down, maintain our lead type of back that David Montgomery is. He's a great NFL running back that is so perfect for the way that they like to run this offense over the course of the entire season. But in the near future, in week 6 and 7, I don't think you're going to see super big days from Monty. You're probably going to have better days from Jahmyr Gibbs, because he just fits what the flow of those games most likely are going to look like. So if you can move Monty specifically at the running back position, if you can go ahead and offload Monty, who's had a couple of big games recently, for a guy like Scadaboo, I would go ahead and do that. If you're looking at wide receiver in his value range, there are a couple of guys here that I think are pretty solid. We just mentioned Jalen Waddle. I think Jalen Waddle is a pretty good target here. I think that some wide receivers in this range, Terry coming back healthy soon, like I would take the shot on Terry, honestly, who's going to be the wide receiver 1 there for Jaden Daniels once he's back healthy. So those are kind of the types of guys that we would target if we move off Monty.
Even in the running back range, like I would take Jalen Warren over Monty rest of the season at this point. When Jalen Warren comes back, he's going to have more guaranteed volume. Like they're ranked very close to each other. Let's talk about Ladd McConkey, who had a good game this week, but the thing is, I think a lot of people are like, okay, Ladd had a slow start. Now we've seen Ladd. Boom, let's go. It's Ladd time. Well, I mean, Ladd had 7 targets today. He only had 39.
Nothing really changed. Actually.
He had a touchdown. Without his touchdown, he scores 8 points again, which is what he was doing when he was bad, right?
Yep.
So he had a touchdown. That was the difference. He had a touchdown. And realistically with Ladd, people have been really, especially creators, looking at the ranking of Ladd McConkey here on the site. A lot of creators are really, really hanging on to this one. Whereas if you can get out of Ladd McConkey anything close to what you drafted him at, which at this point you probably can't, but here are a complete list of wide receivers that if you can get them for, you don't have to go very far up from where he was ranked last week. He's going to go up in rankings probably this week because he had, a good matchup. If you can get any of these guys, I'm doing it. Rice, Adams, Tet McMillan, Sutton, A.J. Browns, Pickens, Zay Flowers. That's my favorite target right there, Zay. Zay is a huge buy in this week, I think, because he actually had 13 points with Cooper Rush.
Yep.
Zay, I would go buy. Honestly, BTJ and Marv, I would probably take over Ladd at this point. Like, yeah, I still would probably prefer those guys. Agreed. Xavier Worthy, call me crazy. Chris Olave, call me crazy. Deebo Samuel, call me crazy. I would take those guys over Ladd.
Yep.
But I honestly think you can aim higher than that. Because again, with Ladd, what typically happens in fantasy football when you have a guy that was drafted in the second round,
validation.
That's exactly what it is. And people just, they get such take luck on this guy was drafted in the second round. Look, if we were evaluating this as a clean slate only, considering what actual performance in the field has looked like this season, Ladd would be in the wide receiver 40s at this point, even after this week. Whereas realistically, you're going to have guys ranking him in the high 20s. And I would take every guy in the high 20s over Ladd at this point. And it's not because Ladd's bad. I think Ladd is great. But I think QJ is really good. And I think Keenan's reliable. And so with Ladd, I mean, again, I've seen multiple trades on this trade finder here. Again, the A.J. Brown, Ladd and Mason Taylor for A.J. Brown. Obviously, you're taking A.J. Brown there, in my opinion. I saw one Ladd for Justin Jefferson straight up. Maybe you could have tried to get that. I don't see that one happening in most leagues, so I'm not even going to give that as a suggestion. But obviously, if you can get that one done, you do it. Now, a bad example, Ladd McConkey for Darren Waller. Don't do that. Don't sell low on Ladd. Only sell Ladd if it's worth. But here's one, Ladd for Olave straight up. I'm fine with that. I'm fine taking Olave at this point. And, even the running backs in the range of Ladd McConkey, I feel like you're getting running backs there are going to be way, way more helpful to you this year than Ladd will. Scadaboo's in that range. Even Kenneth Walker, Chuba Hubbard in that range. You have to down tier to a Jalen Warren and Jordan Mason, but you're not too far away from the ETN. If you can get ETN for Ladd, I would do it. Brees, if you can get Brees for Ladd, I would do it. We're talking not that big of a gap on the rankings of the site between these guys, and there should be a bigger gap. So if you can capitalize on that and you can sell Ladd this week, I think it's a good time. Look, and it's not because I don't think Ladd's not going to do this again. He will, but we didn't see anything crazy. Nothing really changed outside of the fact that he got a red zone touchdown and had a touchdown. Outside of that, I mean, they're going to kind of switch days in this offense. QJ is going to have good days where Ladd doesn't perform. That's still going to happen occasionally. And while Ladd can be somewhat productive, I don't think he's going to be productive at a mid to low end wide receiver 2 level. I think he's probably going to be closer to the low end wide receiver 2 to high end wide receiver 3 this year. And so if you can move him for those guys that are firmly in the wide receiver 2 category, you do it.
So Jordan Addison has had 2 15-point games since he came back from the suspension, which was exactly what I was hoping for when I drafted him in the 7th round of the Flock League. But I will say it doesn't make me any more comfortable about his consistent outlook for the rest of the season because of where this usage is coming from. And a lot of it has been at the end of the game when I've just honestly gotten lucky and been crossing my fingers and holding my breath. Game 1 against Pittsburgh, he gets an 80-yard reception in garbage time at the end of that game. And then you have Cleveland in London where he gets that literally last-second touchdown that ends up winning the game for Minnesota. Ironically, the reason that Addison didn't start this game is because he was, it was like a behind the scenes, coach's decision kind of mini suspension thing where he didn't play for a quarter. So that is partially why his target volume went down a little bit. I'm just saying this is what Jordan Addison does. He generally is touchdown or bust. He's big play or bust. He's Jamison Williams in an offense that just isn't as good. And yeah, he could be more consistent than Jamison Williams. He's demonstrated that, honestly, like he did last season, where he had 39, 13, 14, 18 points, like a really good string of production. But look after the bye week in week 6. You're heading into a bye week for Minnesota, and then once they get back home, they've got Philly, and then they have the Chargers, and then they have Detroit, week 7, 8, and 9. Those are 2 really, really tough matchups where it's going to be difficult even for a guy like JJ to be super productive. It's like pulling teeth trying to watch this offense get both of these guys to be productive, and somehow it happened this week. But I can't rely when we're hoping that JJ is just going to have a really solid day for JJ level expectations. I don't know how often we can expect Addison to just salvage his weeks on last drives. Because again, we are one play away in these first 2 games off the suspension from Addison being in single digits both weeks. We honestly have gotten pretty lucky. I have gotten pretty lucky, and I'm very, very aware of that in his usage. So I would rather go pivot to a wide receiver in an offense that's just better. Again, Terry McLaurin is right there. If you can buy low on Jamison Williams, I think I might take the shot on Jamison Williams, honestly, and other guys in that range as well, like the running backs that we've talked about, who we like there too, like a Jalen Warren. They're just going to have higher floors on a week-to-week basis.
I mean, and realistically, the other huge part here is J.J. McCarthy's coming back. And right now, Carson Wentz has kind of made it to where Jefferson and Addison and Hawkinson can all be productive again.
Yeah, Wentz straight up looks better than McCarthy.
And McCarthy's a development QB, so that's not surprising. Right. I'm just saying, when McCarthy comes back, that's probably the biggest red flag here. And he's not practicing yet, and part of me thinks that they're just not letting him practice because they actually don't want him to play. But, when he comes back, that severely hurts Addison's ceiling as well.
Big time.
So keep that in mind. That's a huge reason for me where it's rest of the season I'm not super comfortable. Tony Pollard, 7, 9, 13, 10, and 14. That's his game log so far. He gets 14 to 20 carries a game pretty consistently. On the games where he hasn't scored touchdowns, 10, 9, and 7 points. And that's with 89, 91, and 86% snap share so far. 49 snaps to Tyjae Spears, 17 snaps. And so when you're talking about the usage there, though, I mean, that's the least amount of snaps that Tony Pollard's played this season by far.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact of the matter is, yeah, he scored 14 points today because he had a touchdown. But this is a guy who has been like grinding to get 10 points with 90% of the share there.
A carbon copy of last season.
Every single running back in this range, I'm going to give you the 5 backs in front of him and the 5 backs behind him. Okay? DeAndre Swift, J.K. Dobbins, Montgomery, Mason, and Warren, all right above him. The next 5 guys above him in the flock rankings. I'll take every single one of those for Tony Pollard. Let's go below. Woody Marks, I would take Woody Marks. Corey Krosky-Merritt, I would take Corey Krosky-Merritt. Trey Benson, I would take Benson if you can afford it. Zach Charbonnet, I would do it. I mean, there's no reason for me to hold a running back on an offense where the offense is terrible, where now you're going to have Tyjae Spears. And would it surprise me if Tyjae Spears came in and looked just as good as Pollard? No,
because we've seen it before.
Because this is something that's not new. And so, again, every single running back for the most part in the range of Tony Pollard I'm going to do. Again, the guy was struggling to get to double digits with 90% snap share. What do you think he's going to do with 70% snap share? And that offense is not getting better, trust me. Again, if you don't agree or if you have players on this list that are on your team, it's not personal. You don't have to sell them. We're probably going to be wrong about 1 or 2 of these guys.
100%.
But this is just what we're doing. And so, this is why we sit here, is to tell you, hey, this is what we're doing in fantasy football. We're doing it for this reason. We've done a lot of research on it. It's up to you to make the decision. But hopefully that helped. Hopefully the guys we gave you to potentially trade for helped as well. Do us a huge favor. Drop a like in the video. Make sure you're subscribed as well if you play fantasy football. And also we got a bunch of free tools for you down in the link below. You can check our rest season rankings. You can check our weekly rankings. You can check everything out for free at the link in the pinned comment. Just create an account with code domain and use all of our free tools this year for fantasy football. We appreciate you guys. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you here soon.